Are Arsenal bottling it again? There are 4 key reasons why the Gunners will win the league and more this season. But will Joel Beer and Harry Symeou agree?
I'm a black and white kind of guy. You know, we have to say it as it is. And sometimes I feel like he's hiding behind the new signings a little bit. He's hiding behind his favourites.
Plus, the guys reveal how many trophies the Gunners will win this campaign. This is The Pitch. Well, Patrick Vieira said that there are still some question marks about the mental strength of the team. His old sparring partner, Roy Keane, said they are feeling the pressure. Joel, are Arsenal going to bottle it?
Close, but no, we'll scrape it.
Okay. Harry?
No, I think it's way too early to be hitting the panic button. I know the weekend's result wasn't great, but to hit the panic button now, I think is a little bit premature.
So let's start from the beginning. New season, new hope. Harry, how do you feel going into this campaign?
Well, yeah, going into this campaign, I thought Arsenal definitely needed to improve on what we saw the season before. There was a drop-off. Obviously, the Champions League campaign sort of gave people hope that and gave people confirmation, I guess, that Arsenal are capable of mixing it with the elite. For me, it was not so much the new season, new hope. It was the end of the transfer window where I really started to believe. Because you looked at the group of players, you looked at what we'd brought in, and you were almost adamant that all the tools were now there. And that hasn't always been the case in the past. There have been times where you've looked at the squad and you can see clear areas where it is weak and you're one injury away from a problem. But the new hope for me was based largely on what we'd done in the transfer window and the strong base that Mikel has built over the last few seasons.
One point about this season going into it was a lot of rival fans were saying that if Arteta didn't win this season, he'd have to go. Do you reckon that would spur the Arsenal squad on?
I don't really think that had anything to do with anything. I think when you look back at the start of the season, Liverpool were the favourites. You know, Isak being bought, Ekitike, even though we didn't know too much about him back then. Man City, everybody said they would galvanise their squad. I think we're actually in a better position than we expected to be.
Yeah, Liverpool weren't quite ready, City weren't either, and we'll move on to that in a bit. But for you then, was there more excitement or trepidation going into the season?
Oh, absolutely excitement. But to build on that point that you've just made, the pressure that was maybe being put on Arsenal, I always felt was unfair. And I thought we needed to do our bit to kind of distance ourselves from that and highlight the fact that Liverpool spent hundreds upon hundreds of millions of pounds to assemble a great squad, to bring in players that we were dreaming of, the likes of Alexander Isak. I think it was really important that the pressure was pushed onto them. For me, listen, there's always hope because Arsenal have been in the mix for a few seasons, and that consistency in terms of being in the conversation for a few years puts you in a place where you've got to believe that you can do it. But the pressure for me, as Joel's alluded to and as you said, was on Liverpool.
Yeah, it was. And Liverpool spent the most in the league, but their net spend was below Arsenal's. Arsenal, £457 million spent on depth this summer. For you, what was the standout of the bunch?
For me, I would have to say probably Eze. I think when we had Eze, it meant that we meant business, not only because he's such a great player, but because we already have a number 10. But it felt like we were saying, hey, we're going to move towards the City vibe here where we're not just going to have one great player per position, we're going to have 2. You know, when I saw that, I thought, oh, we mean business. You know, then after that, obviously, I believe maybe Gyökeres, that was a statement signing as well.
So what is it that felt different for you about this Arsenal side and previous ones in the title race?
A big squad. I think in previous years, we really lost it out because a couple seasons ago, once Saliba was injured, we came up against Liverpool. Final score ended up being 2-2 after being 2-0 up. You go, if Saliba's playing that game, we'll win. You know, we had moments in the season where when Saka was missing last season, you go, where do you go from here? You know, if Kai Havertz ain't there, what happens then? Gabriel Jesus. But now we filled in those parts. You can see that because at the start of the season, we were getting injuries left, right and centre, but it wasn't kind of affecting the whole team.
No, absolutely not. So would you say this is the best Arsenal team since the Invincibles?
In terms of squad depth, you have to say it is. You know, there's a lot of players in there that I think the jury's still out on. I think a lot of the new signings, you got to look at them and you got to ask the question, have they had the impact that we thought they were going to have? I don't think Victor Gyökeres has had that.
I was going to say names, mate. Say names.
I don't think Victor Gyökeres has had that impact. I don't think Eberechi Eze has had the impact. I don't think Noni Madueke has had as much of an impact as maybe Arsenal were hoping he would. So, yeah, it's a really strong squad on paper. But when you've got a big group and you've got a big squad, the responsibility does shift to the manager a little bit more, in the sense of now he's got to find the right chemistry. Now he's got to pick the right pairings, the right partnerships, and he's got to make it work. You can have all the pieces. We've seen Manchester United, for example, for years spend lots of money on talented players. They come to Manchester United and fail. So for me, it was about Mikel Arteta now taking on the burden of finding that chemistry. But in terms of the squad on paper, if you write it out, you've got 2, sometimes 3 players in every position. It's hard to deny that this is the best squad Arsenal have had since 04.
Agreed.
Do you think Arteta does use his squad well enough?
No. I think there's been multiple occasions where the game needs an Eze to come on. You know, yes, I don't think he's had his best performances, as Harry has said, but sometimes you need to be able to feel. When it comes to Odegaard, you can feel that it's like intricate passes. You can see what he needs. But when it comes to Eze, it's completely different, taking on players. And I just think sometimes starting Gyökeres as well when he doesn't need to start. There's so many different things. I think Marino, who's proved himself up top, you know, why is he being demoted back into midfield or only sometimes up top? It's just those small little nuances there for me that make the difference. We need to be bold and go, listen, we've given Victor a chance. Yes, it's great to have Gabriel Jesus back, but the number 1 striker right now at the club is Mikel Marino. Like we have, I'm a black and white kind of guy. You know, we have to say it as it is. And sometimes I feel like he's hiding behind the new signings a little bit. He's hiding behind his favourites. We like Saka. If you've got to drop him, drop him. You know, we have to be a bit more ruthless like Pep.
Yeah, Harry, same question for you.
In terms of the squad use, I think that's the most difficult thing to get right, because it's not only about managing people's minutes, their fitness, their condition. You know, some people go through good patches and bad patches, and you've got to know when those are sort of occurring for different players. But it's also about deciding what works for said game. Right, there are certain games where I think Eze has really played well and he's benefited from being in the side. And there are other games where I think you need an Odegaard. And I think when you've got this many options, we're always going to have those debates about who fits best. Go on.
Harry, what about when he's playing Ben White 3 times in the space of a week when the guy just come back from injury and he needs a rest?
Yeah, and
that's not a good use of your squad, right?
No, agreed. And that was going to be my next point. My gripe with Mikel Arteta has been that at times, even when the replacement is there, when the alternative is there, he's still pushed certain players too hard. There's been games where I've looked at Declan Rice and thought, you look knackered. There's been games where I've looked at Martin Zubimendi and thought, you look knackered. And given the options that you were a part of signing, by the way. So, for example, in the midfield, you brought Christian Norgard in. You were a big part of bringing Christian Norgard in. Why not trust him more? So that's my frustration. We're all going to have debates about who's the best fit for said game and whatnot. But I think that we've still been guilty of pushing certain players too hard, and then that has a knock-on effect on their performances over a period of time.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that. You know, Ben White, Kai Havertz, before they came to the club, were never really injured. Now we've seen it. Havertz again missing the matchday squad against Manchester United. Maybe it's an issue more so in previous seasons. Would you say Arteta relying too much on certain players?
I just think sometimes it happens. You know, injuries is a natural part of the game. Like, we can't say when he's at Brighton, Ben White is not playing Champions League. He's not playing, you know, whatever Europa. He's just playing standard league games in Carabao Cup, whatever. I think now it's a different intensity. We're going for much more. So yeah, you are more likely to see injuries. You know, and that's why he buys a customary defender every season. So I can't really fault him there overall. But in that particular instance, I do agree. I don't think he should have played as much games as he did when he came back.
Yeah. Well, Arsenal are going to need to have all their depth they can this season as they look to compete on numerous fronts. And up 3-2 in the League Cup against Chelsea, top of the Champions League, top of the Premier League, and a favourable home tie against Wigan. Harry, do you think that fighting on numerous fronts will help Arsenal in the title bid this season?
Yeah, I do. And that might sound a bit strange because you might argue that actually being able to focus on the league, playing one game a week should be, better for you. But I think when you've got a squad of this size, everybody needs to play. People need to feel involved. People need to feel connected. And having sort of multiple competitions to pick them in, I think is helpful. I also think when you have a bad league result, like we did at the weekend, you can go and play a Champions League game on Wednesday, win it comfortably and convincingly, and all of a sudden that game is in the rearview mirror. And that's kind of one of the benefits as well from having the big squad. But the quadruple is what it says there.
A bit ambitious, maybe.
Yeah, it's a bit ambitious.
Didn't see that till just now.
But you want to be in the mix, right? You want to be in the mix. And given that all you hear all the time is Mikel Arteta has to deliver a trophy, well, he's got the opportunity to do it in 4 different competitions, so it's only a good thing.
Joe, why do you think Arsenal do look so much better in cup competitions at the moment?
Because I think that there is a history and a pressure when it comes to the Premier League. Not winning it since 03-04. You know, I remember I was in secondary school at the time, you know, like Thierry Henry was cool, you know, like
It still is cool.
It still is cool, to be fair, yeah, like that hasn't changed. But everything else, like I've seen all the eras, man. I've seen the Jose era, you know, I've seen Pellegrini, I've seen Mancini, I've seen, you name it, I've seen everyone. We're talking about Conte, and I think the fans have seen it, and we've come close. Maybe the Leicester year, I look at that Leicester year and I think, that should have actually been our year. It really should have been our year, and we let it slip at one point. And I remember beating Leicester at the Emirates that season, you know, and Welbeck.
Yeah.
You know, so you go back and you look at the last 3 years, and you see how close we were, and how much we've I don't want to say the word bottle, but you've squandered it, I would say, a few times.
I think Arsenal have bottled it. I think if Arsenal don't win the league this season, they've really bottled it.
I think that's 2 out of 4.
I think the first time they were overachieving so much to even be in that position.
Still a bottle.
Yeah,
It is. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe we're here.
You've got to define what bottling it is. To bottle something is to fail to achieve something that you should achieve.
Yeah.
And at the start of that season, the first one, nobody gave us a hope. So I think it's really harsh to say that we bottled.
Harry, it changes. Expectations change.
All things average out.
However you want to put it, what started at the start of the season isn't necessarily what has to be at the end of the season. If you're a student and you've started the year and you were, you know, in foundation set and you've done really well and you're on average and you're on course to go far, that's what the standards are.
Yeah, but that's different because if you're a student, you're in control of your own destiny, right? How hard you study, what talent you have. In football, there's so many factors. There's refereeing decisions. I'm not blaming on that, by the way. I'm just highlighting. There's refereeing decisions. There's fitness issues. There's your teammates letting you down. There's your teammates not perform. There's so many different factors. Football is its own unique beast. Team sports, it's not easy to say.
I understand, but we were so far ahead that it was us that were controlling it.
There were also always games in hand for City, I think. People, because sometimes forget that a little bit. Moving forward though, despite Arsenal not quite winning the league, not quite winning the Champions League, there has been this idea of trusting the process. Arteta has, for a long period of time, had the fans on side. In 2021, he said the project would go bang. And that was a time when Arsenal were 10th. They'd just been knocked out of the FA Cup by Southampton, and they were playing in COVID-induced empty stadiums. Joe, why do you think that Arteta has galvanised and captured the imagination so much of the fans?
I think what he's done is he's been able to bring everybody together and have a winning mindset without name dropping. I do my show with Rio Ferdinand, and he said that when he went to go speak to him at the start of one of the seasons, he was surprised at how everything was about winning at the club. People laugh sometimes about, you know, it says winning on the floor, it's you go there, there's success written on the board. The dog's called wing. You know, it's having the one frame mindset which has helped. And on top of that, when everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, he saw that there was some issues with Aubameyang. He said, you know what, you got to go. And when I look at all the players, secondly, they fight for him because he has had a big hand in their career. For example, David Raya comes from a small team like Brentford, no disrespect, but he brings you to the big leagues, you know.
Yeah.
Saliba gave him the opportunity he needed, even though he needed to go away. Gabriel enhanced him. Ben White got him for Brighton. Saka really moulded into the player he is. You know, Odegaard was in the trenches at Real Madrid, brought him and made him captain. You know, you look at Kai Havertz, wasn't a fan favourite at Chelsea. So all those players have a reason to fight for him for. And that's why he's been able to push everyone towards the right direction.
That's really interesting. So why do you think the fans trusted and continue to trust Arteta?
First of all, he got really, really bad. And when Unai Emery left, I think everybody was fed up, right? It's fair to say that. Yeah. And in comes this guy and he sits down in the first press conference and he tells Arsenal fans exactly what they want to hear. It was like listening to ourselves speaking out from within the club, right? He said all the things you wanted to hear. And have there been bumps along the road? Absolutely. But generally speaking, he's taken Arsenal from a position of being a laughing stock where we were on the floor to a position now where we're standing here recording a show about whether Arsenal are going to win the league or not. That in itself,
quadruple.
Yeah, quadruple. That in itself speaks volumes about the overall job. Do I agree with every decision he's taken along the way? No. Do I agree with every signing he's made? No. Do I think that we've lost games or dropped points in part because of his management at times? Yeah, sure. But generally speaking, when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, he's transformed this club back to what it should be. And that's the important point, I think.
Potentially up until last night. Last night, I was in the stadium as a fan, and it felt tetchy. And I think there's tetchiness in the stadium when United equalise. It seeps onto the pitch. The fans get even more nervous, and the players look a bit edgier as well. Do you think that there's actually this belief in the stadium that we're going to go on to do it, or do you reckon people are just scarred by the past?
I think the anxiety that people are feeling is natural because we haven't won the Premier League for more than 20 years now, right? So that anxiety is natural. But the next question is, what's the remedy to that? The remedy is nothing to do with us. We're fans. We love the club. We're going to feel nervous. We can't detach from the emotional side of the game. The remedy has to be found on the pitch. One of those players, two of those players, three of those players have to step up and produce the kind of moment that Patrick Dorgu did, or the kind of moment that Matthias Cunha did, to give you the points and settle everybody down. They're the only ones that can do it. You or me being extra positive from the stand isn't going to make a difference, right? Does the atmosphere transmit onto the pitch at times and have an impact? You can certainly make that case. But ultimately, that's the remedy to this anxiety and nervousness. It's got to come from on the pitch.
I have to say the remedy is success. So kind of what you're saying, but I would go a step further and go, it's only going to go away until we win, until we know how to win. Yes, we can have moments here and there, and you're right, ultimately that's what leads to success. But I think as fans, exactly like what Harry's saying, mate, it's been difficult, and I have to say, I do think we're going to win the league, but I was really disappointed after the Man United game, and I don't think I've been this disappointed in a couple of seasons.
I think with Arsenal, I think that when Arsenal get over the line, I think that rival fans say that, if you're actually going to win the league, if you're actually going to win the Champions League. I personally think that the fear shouldn't be if we win it, it should be how many we win when we do win it. Personally, because I think that once we've done it, then I feel as though the players will just find a new gear, and we won't have these blips, and there won't be this, backtracking every part of the season. Maybe it is one of those situations, as Joe says, that the remedy is winning. When we do that, it's a dynasty.
Yeah, and that's the hope, obviously, but also things can fall apart really quickly in football, and that's why sort of 3-4 years into being challengers, we're all feeling like this season really counts and really matters, because there's only a certain amount of time that you're going to keep players happy who will believe that their careers are starting to run a little bit further, and they've got to move on.
And how long do you reckon the players will will continue to trust the process? Because, if you're a William Saliba, a Gabriel, a Declan Rice, you're in your prime right now.
Yeah.
Do you reckon they'll always kick around?
No. It depends on a few things. It depends on what their camp's telling them. It depends on their contract situation, and it depends what happens after the World Cup as well. Because you become a global star, especially if you do well internationally, then you start to go, oh, I like this feeling. I like the feeling of, being around these other players that win. What's Mbappe saying over there? If I'm Declan Rice, and he is respected, by the way, by Real Madrid players across the board, firsthand, I could tell you that. I think they could do with someone like him in a position, and I think they would respect him. I think he would start. I think he would bring winning vibe. How long do you say no to that?
Yeah.
And also, while the club are doing all the right things in terms of contracts and extending people's deals, we've seen that the players hold all the power. And it doesn't matter if you've got 3-4 years to run on your contract. If you kick up a fuss and you want to go and someone's willing to pay the money, the club can find itself, although protected financially, in a really difficult situation.
Well, it's not just the players that hold the power as well. Arteta himself, 18 months left on his deal. Where do you think his head's at? Do you think he trusts his own process?
I think it depends on where the process goes. Again, the remedy success. If there's no success, I can see him. It's hard to say Barcelona, because I feel like, that they're doing so well with their manager at the moment, Hansi Flick. But I think it could be a Barcelona. It could be a PSG. I don't think it's going to be City straight away, but he's got a couple of options in Europe, in my opinion, where it could work out. So I think he's also, in the back of his mind, going to be going, where does this go? Do we win it? I think if he wins it, I think there's going to be an extension. Everybody's happy. They go again for a couple of seasons at the very least. I think if he doesn't win it, I don't think he's going to be so quick to want to rush sign a new contract.
What do you want to happen?
I want us to win, and I think if we win, it makes it easier. But then at the same time, if, for example, he comes at the end of this 18-month period and he doesn't win, I don't think anybody's going to boo him out or kick him out. I think that we're going to, really applaud him, thank him for absolutely everything. And I think everybody's going to move away, amicably.
Okay. Harry, if Arsenal don't win the league, would you want Arteta to stay on?
I don't want to even think about the future until this season is over, because I think what happens this season shapes the future essentially. But overall, it's very hard for me to say I want him out because of everything he's done for the club and the journey that we've been on under him. And I know we haven't had that success just yet, but if we did win multiple trophies this season, you could argue that the pain we've had in the last couple is maybe worth that. But I think it's one of those situations where I'm sure as a football club, you've got to do your bit to understand where his head's at along the way, and you should be checking in with each other regularly. But in terms of going public with it or anything like that, I think it's very much a let's see how this goes and decide from there.
It feels like the biggest season in a generation for Arsenal, doesn't it? I mean, so the stakes are so high. You've got Gary Neville constantly saying that there's no excuses if Arsenal don't win it. I do just wonder what sort of an impact that has on the squad, around the dressing room, on the training ground, where it's like, we have to do it this year.
They hear it. You know, as much as players say they focus on other things, they hear it. You know, everybody's on their phone. You see them before the start of the game, they're on their phone. Sure, whether we like it or not, because we probably come from a generation where we were like, no phones at all.
Sure.
But they see it, you know, first thing they do after they win a game, they go, yeah, you see all the posts go out. Yes, sometimes that's their team, but sometimes it's themselves as well. We saw Ahmed Diallo telling someone to be quiet yesterday, mate. All you can do is corners are your only hope. Yeah. So they see what happens. Just as much as he saw what happened when it was positive towards him, he'll see what happens when it's negative towards him.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a challenging situation because, as you say, there is a pressure on, and one of the main reasons why the pressure is on is because the opponents Arsenal are up against are weaker than in previous seasons. Slot and Liverpool spent almost £500 million, but they're not going to be ready to fight for the title this year. Chelsea and Villa aren't ready, and while City are strong, they're still rebuilding. Do you think that this is the best chance Arsenal and Arteta, more prominently, will ever have?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you look at the way that the season's shaped up. Manchester City have struggled for consistency. Liverpool are quite a way off it at the moment. You know, Manchester United have got going now, much later down the line, and it's only 2 games really, if we're being honest. So yeah, look, it's shaping up to be one of those years where Arsenal would have to do very well, I think, to throw it away. But then it's interesting because we say weaker opponents because we're looking at Liverpool and we're looking at Manchester City. But has the bottom line gone up a little bit?
That's a good point.
You know, the likes of Sunderland have come into the division and are very competitive, whereas in previous years, the teams that were coming up were going straight back down. The likes of Brentford are competing, which nobody thought they would. I'm not saying that there's an excuse, by the way, for Arsenal not to win the league. I think we absolutely have to this year. But I do think we say weaker opponents. We're talking about 2 teams in isolation. What about the rest of the league? I'm not quite sure where I stand on that.
I agree with what you're saying there. And I also want to be controversial and say, I don't think it's as pivotal for Arsenal to win it this season as people are making it out to be. Because let's be honest with you, if you take the last 3 seasons, how many times has someone said to you, oh, you've got to win it this year. You're not going to get a chance next year. The next year, same thing. Oh, you got to win it this year. Like last year with Liverpool. Oh, only Liverpool are competing. We've had opportunities in the last 3 years. I think it's actually just down to us. Again, not saying this is going to last forever, but if you look at the last 3 years, City have started bad. You know, like United have been nowhere near it. Chelsea have still been growing. We've been ahead. We've been behind. So I think the Premier League, mixing with what you're saying a little bit, it's a bit trickier than what people make it out to be.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think that, you know, people often do say this is the season, and then actually, you know, get around to August and there's another season, there's another lot of opportunity to.
Who would have thought this year would be the year like this?
No,
if you're going with what everyone's been saying.
Yeah, you'd have thought it was Liverpool, and you'd have backed City, who have spent in the last 2 transfer windows really big as well. That goes under the radar. But I also think when I was talking about football earlier, having all these different variables, another one is the tactical evolution of the Premier League. Mikel Arteta built a side with a view to dealing with problems of the past couple of years. And now we're faced with new problems and new challenges. And I'm not saying he's the only one. It's the same with Liverpool. They built a team that they thought was going to thrive this season, only to find different issues in front of them. The constant evolution of the tactical approaches is a problem that everybody's struggling with at the moment. It's not just Arteta, it's not just Arsenal.
No, absolutely. I think that when we go into, you know, weaker opponents, you know, there's the argument that maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Why is it that so many Arsenal fans today have been saying that the only team that can stop Arsenal is Arsenal?
Because we've been in the best position. If you look at the way results have gone, because City haven't been at their best, or Liverpool, you name it, whoever, even Villa have been good. But I mean, there's been opportunities for us to run away from the pack, is what I'm saying. We could have been 12 to 15 points clear, easy. You know, we conceded a last minute equaliser against Sunderland. You know, we've gone to Liverpool. Maybe we should have got a draw. I mean, say what we want about the free kick. You know, you don't get the points against Liverpool. Don't get the points against Nottingham Forest.
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Against 10 men.
You got Liverpool. Yeah, there you go. You got Liverpool who are there for the taking. You should be beating this United team, regardless of manager bounce back, or at least drawing. There's so many points in there. I know people might say if buts and maybes, but with the complete squad that we've got and the experience we've got now, we should be rolling teams over.
But we are all saying that Arsenal aren't going to bottle league this season. We're going to win it.
Yeah, I'm not at that point yet where I'm ready to say that it's falling apart.
You're positive. You're positive, am I right?
Absolutely. It's a bump in the road.
Yeah.
We might look back on it at the end of the season and say it was a pretty big bump and it done some serious damage. Yeah. But right now, I don't think as fans, as players, as management, you can afford to allow that mindset to take over. Not in January, not at this stage.
And Joe, you're saying we'll win it by about a point?
We'll win it by a point. But at the same time, I do think that what's happened against Manchester United, depending on what the players' mindsets are, it could actually end up being a good thing. You know, like, it depends on who you are and how you are as an individual, but it could really roll people up. And I'm hoping that's the outcome.
So before we started today, I asked you both to let me know how many trophies you think Arsenal will win this season. Harry, I'll start with you. How many do you think it is before I unveil this?
I think it's going to be 2. As long as it's one of the big ones, I'll be pleased. And then if we can pick up something else as well, I think that would be great. I think being in the stage we're at in the Carabao Cup, I think if we could win that, I'm not saying it will definitely be season defining either way, but just to just give those players the feeling of winning, it might just give them that extra 5-10% that they need to see it out in the Premier League. We went to the Champions League semi-final last season. We came up against a better team than us, deserved winners in the MPSG, but we were competitive in Europe's Premier competition. So there's no reason not to think that we can't have a 50% success rate.
So which 2 do you reckon?
If I had to predict, I'd probably say the Premier League and the League Cup at the moment.
Okay, and Joe?
Same thing as my brother Harry over there. Like, I believe that the League Cup is a great springboard. You know, some of these guys, they've won, some of them haven't won, but the most important thing is we would be winning together for the first time. So yeah, I think it's very important, and I think we will win it because it's a one-off game against City, I would say. Once we beat Chelsea, I'm confident of that. And I also think the Premier League will be the other thing we win because, look, I do believe that we're like top 3 best teams in the Champions League at the moment, but cup games, you don't know how it's going to go. You know, at the moment, I think we're better than Real Madrid. I think we can beat Barcelona, but those teams, when it comes to the knockout stages, they also there's something within their DNA that they're used of winning over the last 10, 15 years. So that might be difficult to keep up with, if I'm honest with you. I can see us reaching the semis, but the Premier League, I think
that's the one with the unfinished business. For me, I mean, obviously, I think the biggest weakness Arsenal have is they've never won the Champions League, but becoming so close in the league year after year, I think that's the one that they need to take off. Yeah. I think the Champions League, it was almost like a bit of a blip to get to the semi-final.
I think the Premier League is the only one that will well and truly stop the noise.
Yeah.
I think if Arsenal won the Champions League, it would be amazing in the context of the club's history. Never won it before. And for me personally, I've seen my team win the league unbeaten. It doesn't get any better than that. So the Champions League is the holy grail for me personally. But then people are going to say, well, you were in a commanding position in the league and you didn't win it. And there's still going to be those questions, and they're going to carry over into the next season, and it's going to continue to be a shadow over us. And that's why I think the league is probably the most important.
And then Man United will say that, but you never even won the league, so how can you be champions of Europe? So, yeah.
A song that I've sang to opposition fans many times as well over the years.
Well, so both of them are saying that Arsenal are not going to bottle it, which is great news for all Arsenal fans watching. Harry, will you do me a favour? Would you look down your camera and explain why Arsenal won't bottle it? Why you can shut up the haters?
Arsenal aren't going to bottle it because they've got the best squad in the Premier League by quite some distance. Despite the recent blip, they've shown the most consistency, and I think that there's nobody good enough at this moment in time to knock them off top spot, even if they have been going through a rough patch of late.
Joe?
I think Arsenal's squad depth is the answer to this. I think, we have a great defensive ability, and the reality is at the start of the season, we were winning games, not because we were scoring a lot of goals, but because we were conceding not too many. Right about now, we're leaking in a few goals. So once we tighten up at the back, we're going to go back to winning ways, whether they be from throw-ins, whether it be from corners, wherever it is, we're going to get tight and we're going to win the league that way.
Well, that's all for the pitch today. Arsenal fans, you've heard from us. What do you reckon? Let us know in the comments below. If you love the pitch, don't forget to check out The Hook with Charlotte daily on Mail Sport Boxing.